African American men and Latino men seem to be defecting from the Democratic Party in historic numbers, or at least over the in the post-war era, and moving towards the Republican Party, or specifically to Trump.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's specifically Trump, actually, because the movement, as I showed in some of my other works, actually predated Trump. It started around 2012 for a lot of the votes with the movement with Black and Hispanics, and actually, I think sometimes people overplay the gender thing, the gender aspect, actually. So in 2020, for instance, Trump got a bigger share of the Black vote, the Hispanic vote. But that was true with Black women and Hispanic women, as well as men. And it was also true with white women. Like, the reason Biden was able to win was despite these defections among women across the board, and especially these defections among Blacks and Hispanics across the board, is because he saw significant gains with white men. So, like, and it's
particularly college educated.
College educated, but also people who live in suburbs, people who are relatively affluent. Like, this is the block of America that really cares about things like decorum and civility and the president being presidential, and Trump is not those things, right? And even today, so there was this great tweet by the senior political analyst of NBC News. He put up this tweet that was like...
He sounds very impressive. If this was 1970.
So he put up this tweet from a chart that his own team produced that was like, what's behind Trump's gains with Blacks and Hispanics? Shifts among men and young people. But when you look at the chart, his own chart, what you see is that women actually shifted more than men towards the Republican Party. Black women, Hispanic women, they shifted more than Black and Hispanic men towards the Republican Party over the same period. And so I pointed this out, Matt Iglesias pointed it out, and now that tweet is community noted. But all to say, I think people are kind of locked into this gender narrative, and I don't actually know how. I mean, we'll see in the post-election data kind of what it looks. But I think people are actually kind of maybe overplaying the gender narrative, especially as it relates to.
But does it come down to something as easy that elites, and particularly maybe liberal or progressive elites, believe that Blacks and Latinos will follow their lead, that they will read the tea leaves exactly the same way, but those people feel, or those voting groups feel, like they are either they're not getting what they need out of the Democratic Party, or things are getting better for them. So why would they, follow blindly what the professoriate says?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two big problems the Democratic Party faces. One is that because symbolic capitalists, these knowledge economy professionals, because we've become like the core constituency of the Democratic Party, and we shifted a lot. The Democratic Party shifted a lot over the same period I show. You can look at the Democratic Party platform; it shifted hard.
Yeah, this is remarkable, and in the show notes and whatnot, we'll have links to this. But I mean, you've consistently shown that the kind of extremeness of American politics over the past decade or 15 years is really because the left has moved far left, not the right.
The Democratic Party has shifted much, much more than the Republican Party, especially on cultural issues. And a lot of the cultural positions that the Democratic Party is taking are actually off-putting to non-white voters. So if you look, for instance, at which sectors of the Democratic coalition are most skeptical of immigration, like open immigration policies, it's African Americans and Hispanics. Which sectors of the Democratic coalition are most skeptical of gender-affirming care for minors and things like that? Well, that would be Black and Hispanic Americans. Which sectors of the Democratic coalition are most supportive of things like the Muslim ban? Well, that would also be Black and Hispanic voters. Like, a lot of Black and Hispanic voters are evangelical or other forms of Christian. They view Islam as a false and dangerous religion, and they're perfectly happy to see less Muslims coming into the country. And this kind of a thing is hard for progressives to process, because we often think in these intersectional terms. We view all these struggles as interrelated, and we want to liberate everyone together. But that's not how the people that we claim to represent and want to support think about these issues at all. And so the further the Democratic Party has moved on these cultural issues, the more that they've prioritized these cultural issues over bread and butter things that people actually care about, the more that they've alienated the very populations that they want to represent. And so that's been a big, but the reason why Democrats remain competitive despite alienating minority voters is because the GOP is alienating white voters at the same time. So there's this narrative that whites support Trump in this extraordinary way, and that the reason Trump won because of white voters. That was, as I've shown in my research, that was not true in 2016. Actually, white turnout was stagnant, and he got a smaller share of the white vote. He won because of shifts of minorities. But this has persisted all the way. In 2018, Democrats saw gains purely because of shifts in white voters. In 2020, again, Biden won because of shifts among white men. In 2022, when you look at the midterms, and the same is true today in contemporary polling, whites are shifting more towards the Democratic parties, minorities are shifting more towards the Republican
Well, it
parties.
sounds like a great opportunity for the Libertarian Party.